Hello and welcome to my webcast. My name is Senator Chuck Fushillo, and joining me tonight on an important topic of cyberbullying, to my left is Becky Del Giudice. Becky, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
To my right, John Halligan. John, as always, it's great to see you. And Zach Penza. Both of you are students at Seaford High School.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank you very much for joining me this evening. This is a very important topic. One of the things we're going to do tonight, if anybody has any questions that they'd like me to ask of Becky, Zach, or John, please email me at my email address is fuschill@nysenate.gov. John, I had seen you speak on cyberbullying a while back at Lakeside Elementary School in Merrick.
Yes.
Very powerful presentation. You've been traveling all over the country. When I look at statistics that I've seen, that 41% of teens in a recent survey have been cyberbullied. 81% say it's easy to do. And then I look at the top reasons for cyberbullying. The victim deserved it. They wanted to embarrass somebody. They wanted to show off. They wanted to be mean. They thought it was fun. They thought they'd get back at somebody. As a parent, it frustrates me to see something like that. And one of the reasons for this webcast, which is live, as we know, is we're trying to reach as many individuals and families as we possibly can, maybe in the privacy of their own home or with a group. Let's talk about Ryan. Back in 2003, you lost your son tragically.
Yes, I lost my son Ryan to suicide on October 7, 2003. And we were aware that he was being bullied to a certain extent, but we didn't know how bad it got until after his death. And a lot of what we discovered was on his computer. And he was an early victim of what we're calling cyberbullying today. You know, he was at the start of this problem when kids at that time frame were just starting to get onto AOL Instant Messaging. And that was the predominant way that they were communicating with each other.
Through the internet.
Through the internet. And, you know, part of it was a kid that he had issues with since the 5th grade. There was kind of an on and off relationship with him. And when things got really bad, he spread a rumor that he was gay online and also at school. And then there was a point during the summer between 7th and 8th grade where a girl pretended to like him online through instant messaging, and then told him to his face that he was a loser when 8th grade started up. And it was shortly after that my son had killed himself.
What did you see in Ryan? What was the change in him? Did you see a change in him?
Well, you know, yeah, hindsight's 20/20.
Right.
But you know, now that I'm almost an expert on this kind of stuff, the signs were, you know, that last summer he was withdrawn from the family quite a bit. You know, he was spending a lot of time behind a closed bedroom door, on his computer. We didn't know at the time, but as I discovered, dealing with this issue in a very unhealthy way. They were erratic behavior, kind of wild mood swings, you know, in the last couple of weeks. And there was actually a point where he had a discussion with us where he made it about his progress report being bad, that he had hinted that he was suicidal. Yeah, you know, we thought it was just about the progress report. And, you know, these are just one of the many things that had come up that I try to share with parents now.
Well, we appreciate all your work, and one of the reasons why we're doing this tonight is because when I went to your program, it was extremely powerful. And I appreciate it. And you're traveling all over the country now.
That's correct.
Becky, as a parent, we're always concerned about this, and you heard John. What are you seeing? And it's not just in high school, because you are a high school student now.
Right.
And I've talked to you and Zach about what you're doing in your school, and it's phenomenal, Zach, I must tell you. And you're very progressive in your work. But what scares parents and young and old alike now is the advent of the growth of Facebook and how easy it is to just post something on it and walk away.
It's totally evolving, the act of cyberbullying, as opposed to instant messaging, like with your son and everything. With Facebook now, the like button and everything, there's a power in numbers, which is scarier than ever because students can just gang up on each other just by clicking a button. And I also find the whole anonymity, you know.
Well, that's
so
it.
it's like Formspring and everything.
I mean, does somebody, Zach, feel like they're a giant behind the internet when they put something that's deflammatory and hit enter?
You know, it's a lot easier to just type something that you know you would never say to a person if they were right in front of you. Because it takes all of the power out of a two-person situation and puts it all on you. It gives you basically you can get off scot-free. This person's going to read it and have no idea who posted it. And that, to me, is ridiculous. I believe anonymity on websites should just be done away with completely. It makes absolutely no sense to me.
Well, let's talk about that because, what are we looking at as parents and what are you looking at with your friends when you see this? I mean, he saw a change and you said hindsight's 20/20 now. You saw a change in Ryan. I mean, do you see this? Are you seeing kids shut down?
Mm-hmm.
Do you
Absolutely.
notice a difference when they're walking through the halls or they're at an event?
Yes. In high school, we as high school students, it depends. Some people are very reserved and will not show their emotions during
Right.
school, and some people will wear their heart on their sleeves. I believe a few days ago we were speaking, a mutual friend of Becky and I had attended Mr. Halligan's presentation,
Right.
and while she is a mutual friend of me and Becky, she's a very good friend of mine, and she had been going through some stuff, and after she saw Mr. Halligan's presentation, her attitude and outlook changed completely. It was a complete 180, and that's the power that we have right here in this room. If we can reach somebody right now, we can bring someone in a completely different direction.
The question is what's driving this? I mean, is it easy, John, just to get on that? I mean, we know it's easy to get on it
Right.
and post something, walk away, but if you have 3,000 Facebook friends, they're getting that posting.
Right.
And we talked about in another
Right.
discussion that there's a like button. How many people would dislike it? But you don't want to get into a survey
Right.
about this particular issue. Are you finding that in your presentation that people maybe are starting to think that, this is obviously the wrong way to go and it's too easy to do?
Well, I believe young people know that it's the wrong thing to do. I mean, that's not a mystery.
Well, we would hope. I mean,
clearly know it's the
that
wrong
they
thing
don't
to
The
do
do
majority.
it.
The majority.
Right.
But I think the point is that they don't, especially with the middle school age group, I think they're at a maturity level that's not quite well developed
Right.
enough to understand the potential effect on their target.
Right.
That things can get, way beyond out of control. And, at that age group, I think they're just too self-centered at that point to understand the effect that their words are having on this other person.
Mm-hmm.
But they do know to a certain extent that they're making the person feel bad. I mean, that's part of the motivation of doing this stuff.
So
it's,
with Ryan, what was it, just a joke? Was it just something that just got out of control and perpetuated and continued growing? Because Zach and Becky, I'm sure you see this.
Absolutely.
And here we have the ultimate tragedy where your
Right.
son's no longer with us. But what started this roller coaster, this domino effect?
Yeah, well, I don't, the stuff that went on with my son really, that kind of stuff went on when we were kids too, but the audience was quite limited, and the opportunity to do it was quite limited. So you had to do it in person basically, and in this case, I think things easily got out of control because there was a greater audience and a greater reach, and I think my son felt overwhelmed. And if you talk to the experts about suicide, to get to the point of feeling suicidal is a point of feeling overwhelmed emotionally about something and feeling like there's no other better way out of this than this path. And that to me scares me the most about this generation, is that it doesn't take a lot of imagination to realize that things can get out of control in this digital world very easily.
Videos even go viral and everything
Right.
on YouTube. Students take a video in the locker room and totally expose someone, and the next day, 1 million people know, and it's like, how do you face everyone the next day in school?
Right. I mean, when we were kids, it was hard to face those 3 or 4 people.
Right.
So I can't imagine coming into the school building and realizing the entire school knows about this, and not only the school building, but probably a couple of towns around us know about this.
And we've seen that, the videos, and you've seen tragic events over this country on the news with college kids that have committed suicide
Right.
as a result of something that when aired out there. And once it's on, it's there.
Absolutely. It's permanent. No matter what you go through to try to delete something, through the computer magic, for lack of a better term, it can be brought back. It's a permanent thing.
Right.
Whatever you're posting is right there. And I think, as Mr. Halligan was just saying, it gives you a greater audience. It gives whatever is posted. It could be shown to anyone.
Right.
Anyone at any time. And that's what scares me about the advent of technology, where there's kids in middle schools with iPhones, and they can have access to the internet at any time. And that will lead to a potential, maybe a rise in either cyberbullying or a rise in the suicide rate.
Zach, how about elementary school with Blackberries
gosh.
now,
It's
or
ridiculous.
iPhones? It's ridiculous, absolutely. You know, the $1 million question that's always being asked is, you know, what are the signs, and how do we deal with it? How do we stop it? You came in, you were talking to me about what your high school's doing. Let's talk a little bit about that and maybe help some individuals out there, because after the program, it's actually on my website right now. Your web address is there, and many other resources where individuals can go to for help in a confidential manner. They don't have to identify themselves, and that's really the goal here tonight, Becky, Zach, and John, that if somebody is being bullied and they feel they have no place to turn, we're giving them some resources. But you know, we need to see the signs, obviously, and when you start to see somebody, and it's not just a young person, young adult, it's adults as well.
I think
we need to see the signs.
I think one of the greatest changes that you could see in a person is change itself. So, you know, if you have someone who's generally timid, if they suddenly are, you know, totally outgoing or something and not being themselves, I think that's one of the greatest warning signs, is a sudden change in personality.
Let me ask you a question. Two young adults here. John and I are a little bit older. Do you feel, I mean, do the kids that you deal with, you do mentoring programs, we talked about that, and that's incredible to do. But do they feel there's no place to turn? Those that you aren't mentoring, are there places to turn? You know, sometimes, look, I have 3 children. Sometimes, you know, you want to pry it out of your kids to talk to you when you shut down. Sometimes they don't talk to their friends. And we don't want, you know, the tragic events to continue. We want to be able to have somebody turn to somewhere.
I mean, Becky and I are both, we do a program, the freshman mentor group, in which a student will take a group of maybe 6 or 7 freshman students and just talk them through. I think we meet once every month, and we bring these kids in and we talk to them. But, you know, as, you know, it's normally on a Monday, kids are tired, they don't want to talk about their feelings. But we always give them a place to turn. I gave out my phone number individually to every single one of my freshman group, and I said, if you have a problem, call me, text me, get me on Facebook, whatever you need to do. And I've helped out a few kids in my school that were going through some problems, and I'm very proud of that, and I'm very thankful to the freshman mentor program that allowed me to do that.
But the numbers are staggering, and when we talked about statistics that more than 40% of the kids, I mean, have been cyberbullied. John, they're staggering. And as technology continues to improve, and I mean, what is it now? iPhone 4, iPhone 5, Zach? What's out there now?
iPhone 4S, whatever it is.
Facebook, I mean, the popularity of that, people are twittering. John, the numbers are just growing.
Right, and so you know, part of this is we can actually take this technology and use it in a positive way too, recognizing that this generation does prefer to communicate electronically. They're more comfortable this way, and so, you know, I think these ideas that we're talking about, having mentors in place for freshmen and even reaching out to the middle schoolers, I think this is one of the avenues we can actually take advantage as well. You know, so let's take a space that's being misused and let's use it in a positive way.
I think a lot of schools should try and take advantage of the freshman mentor type program with having older students watch over the younger ones, because I find that even being a freshman mentor myself, like Zach did, you can monitor the freshmen on Facebook and everything, and like keep an eye out for when someone posts a degrading status or whatever. So, you know, I think what it comes down to is having the students take control of the situation, because the students are the ones who can make or break it. And although adults can intervene and everything, it ultimately comes down to the peer group. So,
well, when you give your presentations, do parents come up to you afterwards and help me break through my child, the communication barrier? It's not easy, you know, when you I mean, come on.
The door closes.
You could probably, and I'm not saying you two, but individuals that have the mentoring programs, and you would encourage, and I'm glad you talked about that, to start these programs. But it may be easier for them to talk to you than to talk to us.
It might be, but the other suggestion I have to parents is, you know, don't come across like an interrogator. You know, pull up a chair, sit down next to them, and say, you know, so talk to me. How you know, what do you do with this technology? You know, what apps do you have on your phone? You know, teach me? I want to learn. You know.
Who do you feel you reach more in your presentations? the audience of kids, young adults,
That's
or the
hard.
parents?
Well, you know, I will tell you this.
Because it's very emotional. I
Yeah,
will
it is
tell you,
very
it's
emotional.
Very powerful.
I will
what
be
this
honest.
presentation.
You know, I love talking to students because I sense, and the feedback I always get is that they appreciated a real story. You know, that I wasn't just up there lecturing and talking about somebody else's story in third person. But the reality is I have a captured audience. So I know that I have the bullies, I have the bullied, and I also have the bystanders, by the way, that I want to talk about. We have some time here tonight. But when I do the parent presentation, the thing that frustrates me a lot is the parents that do show up are usually the ones that are already engaged. You know, they're usually dedicated to their kids already. And there's this vast audience of parents that I think are still so disconnected and in denial. I mean, I hope they tuned in to this webcast
Well,
today.
let's talk about something like that.
The
And
bystanders.
the bystander.
Right.
Sure.
That's a very important part of
Right.
your presentation. Zach, Becky, what are we looking at? I mean, as bystanders,
I think the majority.
are we afraid to get involved?
Yes. Yes, because if you're the bystander, your biggest fear is, will I be the target next? So, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Do you feel that?
Absolutely. You can even take it as, you know, whenever you watch something happen that you know is wrong and you don't, and that you know you could have done something to stop, that to me, I wouldn't be able to live with myself. That's ridiculous. If you were, I actually had an experience like this just the other day where two people were getting into an altercation in the middle of my class. It was ridiculous. I couldn't believe it, and I broke it up. I'm like, but there are kids here trying to learn. Just take it outside or stop.
Right.
That's what you have. That is what I think people need to do. People need to get involved. It doesn't matter the fact that people have told me that that's a pretentious move, that I'm being too goody-goody about it. But I feel like that's the only way this is going to get done, take it outside. Just
What are you expecting from a bystander? Or what are you encouraging?
What I'm encouraging students is to step up, you know, especially the ones who are friends of people who bully. You know, I look at this as a positional power of influence, and that, you know, you can have bystanders who are friends of the victim, bystanders in between somewhere, and then they have the ones who are friends of the people who are doing this stuff. And I always go back to my own teenage memories that I listened to my friends far quicker than I listened to anybody else.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you can get friends to correct friends, then we'll make a lot more progress here.
So let me ask you a question, Zach and Becky. I'll direct this to both of you. And I'll stay on Facebook because it's so popular
Right.
and it's so easy, and I'm sure that you hear this all the time from parents now, and even the kids that you talk to. It's so easy to post it. How do you address it immediately, so it doesn't come to the effect of negative effects and leads to depression and leads to suicidal thoughts?
Right.
You know, how do you jump in if you're a victim of this?
Well, I mean, I know, taking from the bystander point of view, that it's so easy to just scroll past something and pretend you didn't see it, and I think that's one of the biggest issues, because you're more often likely to be that bystander who just sees it on your newsfeed rather than to be the victim. So I think that one way of combating the issue entirely is to report it, or to say something like, that's not cool, you know? And I think that just by confronting a person about it automatically takes away some of their power, especially because you're not the only one thinking it.
Well, that's what he has said.
Right.
When we were kids,
Right.
it was face to face.
Right.
Now,
Exactly.
Zach, it's
If
so
you-
easy to do.
exactly. If you see something, then you could put up the chat. It doesn't have to be right there out so everybody can say, look, that's not cool.
Right.
You know, let someone know. Because you post something like that and it's all over Facebook, as we know, it's a very wide audience, and then school the next day, or, you know, the next couple of days, it will just be nonstop. It will be what everyone's talking about.
Right.
And that leads to suicide, which is it's a temporary solution. It's a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Right.
And the fact that we have that kind of power, as to just type something and click it, and it would have this sort of end game, is very frightening.
You know, you said something during one of the bullying things that I thought was really powerful, being that your voice is your strongest tool in everything. And I think instead of using it to harm others, you could use it to help other people by reaching out to the victim, or reaching out to the bully and even finding out what's going on with them. And
So I guess the bystander is pretty powerful, John, huh?
Absolutely.
Probably
That's-
more powerful
yeah,
than
I
the
mean,
bully position, I think.
Zachary and Becky right here have a lot of power and influence over their peers.
What's
much more.
What's working? What's working in your school? I mean,
Well,
we're not going to highlight just one particular school. You know, I hope people from
Yes.
all over are watching this.
Absolutely.
But Zach, let's talk about it
Um,
because you're very involved.
Yes, I have a list of things by month that we've been doing over here in Seaford High School. Back here in December, students in 8 classes took something called the Students United for Safe Schools survey during the last week of December, in which they were asked questions about the school and about, like, do you feel safe in school? Have you ever been in a position...
Let me interrupt you. Was it done in a confidential manner, or did they
It-
have to pen their name to a piece of paper?
It was done in a confidential...
Yes.
Okay.
Good, good.
And they got a cross section of each of the classes, so it wasn't just the advanced kids, it wasn't just the remedial or regents
Right.
or anything like that.
That
It was
creates
everyone.
a dialogue, John.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I don't remember the figures per se, but I believe it was 81% of kids said that they had at one point been cyberbullied. 81% out of 8
Wow.
classes
In this particular survey.
in this
Right.
particular
Wow.
survey.
That's
That's not even the whole school. That's 8 classes,
Yeah.
Right.
which is a staggering.
And think about how
staggering.
damaging that is. Let me go back to you for a minute on your son Ryan.
Mhm.
What you found out afterwards, you know, that his tragic passing was enough to destroy you and your family.
Right.
But it didn't stop, did it? What you found out in your research and what was really going on in his life.
Well, you know, as you can imagine, in a situation like this, you know, you keep asking the question why, and until you get some answer, you don't stop. And you know, the strange thing about having a child who used technology, that the technology not only killed him, but it also gave me I mean, let me back up on that. The technology didn't kill him, it was the misuse of the technology.
Right.
But the technology also enabled me to understand what happened here,
Right.
because it kept stuff that, you know, had this all occurred verbally, you know, 20 years ago, you know, this could have happened too as an outcome, but I wouldn't be here right now. I'd still be wondering, you know, what happened here.
Right.
So, you know, the technology recorded what happened.
Yeah. Becky, this is the ultimate tragedy,
Right.
obviously, and again, we're here tonight because of John's presentation and how he really grabbed me and both of you. Zach has a whole list there. What else is working in your school that others can utilize in their own schools and bring these programs there? The mentoring program is
Right.
very powerful.
I think the peer-to-peer contact is probably the greatest thing so far, because in the past we found that having administration bring in the bully and the victim was totally the wrong approach.
Right.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Right. Okay. So
Conflict resolution.
Right.
I think is what they call
Conflict
it.
resolution.
Right.
You have the bully in the room and you have the victim, and you're basically putting the victim through this whole tragedy and this like trauma of like sitting in the room facing their bully, and the bully just says, "Yeah, I'm sorry," and rolls their eyes and
Right. It's not
gives
working,
some phony
No.
apology. But under administration eyes, everything's okay because on paper, you know, the bully said, "I'm sorry,"
Right.
but doesn't really solve anything. The problem continues afterwards.
Absolutely, and we have about 4 or 5 minutes in between class, which I think creates more conflict than inside class,
Why is that?
because
No
we're
supervision.
no supervision. Well, used to no supervision, and everyone's together. It's a chaotic situation, and anything could happen. That's why Seaford High School has started to have the teachers stand outside of their rooms until all other students are inside.
Okay.
The bell rings, and instruction starts, which I think is great. Which I think is a very, very powerful tool in competing against, you know.
You know, I want to remind everybody who's watching that on my website we have cyberbullying resources, and obviously Ryan's story is on there with help, but other resources as well, that if somebody's watching, they need to call out for somebody. And they could also call my office too, and we could be happy to provide all of the resources. And my number is 516-882-0630. Or, John, we have less than 10 minutes left. What are the signs? Let's talk about that. What are we looking for, not only as parents, but
Right.
as friends, as teachers, administrators, general acquaintances? What are we looking for?
Yeah, I think as Becky put it before, any change should be a
Right.
concern, right? Any change from normal behavior or a typical personality could be a sign.
Right.
No, we shouldn't overreact to everything,
Right.
but you know, there are things like, you know, they don't want to do certain things that they typically like to do. You know, we're gonna hang out this weekend. Well, I don't really feel like it this weekend. You know, they start withdrawing from their friends or from their family, things that they typically like to do. The other thing I bring up in the parent presentation is, you know, a lot of kids who are starting to feel this way, one of the precursors is to start to cut themselves. You know, so and this is not just a girl thing, by the way. This boys can do this as well. And you know what they do is they'll cut themselves in their wrist either with a razor blade or a knife, and it's their way of trying to transfer emotional pain into physical pain. You know, so as parents of middle school and high school students, I think you got to pay very close attention to their wardrobe. You know, are they suddenly wearing long sleeve shirts all the time, or putting stuff around their wrists, looking like they're trying to camouflage something? I know it's a hard thing to think about. You never want to think your own child would actually harm themselves in any way, but that is the reality, and you got to. And you know, if you find it, you got to get them to help.
And at the same time, that's definitely a sign. I think that's a huge indicator of either bullying and or suicidal thoughts. I mean, that should be a red flag to anyone.
Sure.
Are you concerned when you leave about these programs continuing, or do you feel they'll continue in your school?
I have a concern. Yeah.
Well, I tell you, I have to commend your school district. I must say that.
We're doing the best we can.
Because you're doing a lot, and what you've done. Like he brings up a very interesting topic that people aren't talking about.
Right.
Cutting. I mean, that's pretty serious.
Right.
Have you had kids come to you?
Yes.
Since you've been involved? You have?
Yes. Maybe not within my freshman group, but definitely peers and friends have come to me with that.
And?
It's a very it's a powder keg of a situation. You need to choose your words very carefully in something like that. And you know, it's easy to be like, whoa, why? What are you doing? But you need to sit down. You need to reason with that person because they're in a very volatile situation where anything could happen.
The most important thing that I think you could do for someone, if you are approached by that kind of situation, is to listen to them, because more often than not, it's a cry for help, and they just want to be heard because there is something going on. And I think one of the most important things for parents is to create that open dialogue, a level of mutual respect between parent and child. I found that in my own experiences, being brought up by my parents, something that helped me in, being bullied in middle school and everything was hearing my parents' stories, actually like getting down onto that level where they understood what I was going through and everything, and hearing what they had to go through, because you could just really relate to them and everything.
You finding kids shutting down more so today than ever?
Well, I don't have any statistics on that, but just talking anecdotally to young people, there's a lot of pain out there. Obviously, if you got 80% of the school saying they're being cyberbullied, there's got to be a significant amount of pain that's coming along with that statistic. And then there's a subset of that where kids are taking it to the point where they're cutting themselves or doing self-harming kind of behavior. And by the way, I think the drugs and alcohol issue itself also ties into a lot of this.
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure, just the need to self-medicate and try to numb themselves from pain. I mean,
there's just so much competition. I think that's like one of the underlying issues of all of these problems, is that we're growing up in such a competitive age and everything. Just even getting into college, that itself is such a struggle. And once you throw in relationships and everything, grades, sports, everything, everyone just wants to be the best, and even if it means putting someone else down.
And let me ask you something.
So
what's
sick.
going on with Facebook that what you eat you have to post, where you walk you have to post, and everything?
They have Foursquare now where you have to log into where you are and everything.
Is that real? Is that right?
They have an app.
I mean, it's just,
I think everyone's trying to live a reality show at this
right.
point.
We're not reality stars.
I don't know.
It's getting a little carried away.
It is.
Absolutely.
We have less than 4 minutes. I just wanted to throw it back to both of you. Mm-hmm. You raise a very important issue here, what kids should look for and who they talk to. Zach, your school is doing a lot, and we appreciate their efforts, and both of you, obviously. Kids to kids, open up the lines of communications?
Yes. Absolutely. We actually, something that we haven't brought up yet is the fact that people could be bullied due to their sexual orientation, as well as
race, religion, sexual orientation. It could be anything.
Especially sexual orientation is a big thing now, as with Mr. Halligan's son was an example of that. But February 2nd, the Board of Ed approved a proposal for a Gay Straight Alliance at Seaford High School,
Okay.
which I believe will be going into effect either this year or next year.
Mhm.
And I am personally extremely excited about that because
Good.
it shows, I believe, a level of maturity.
Tolerance.
Tolerance,
Mhm.
absolutely. And I think if people were to get involved in that, we would have, obviously, we couldn't get everybody to, conform to a certain form of tolerance, but I believe it would be a huge, huge factor.
In all facets of life, too.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can see somebody criticize somebody the way they look, the way they dress, the way that you talked about this last week about
Absolutely.
you wearing
Right.
your hair long, the comments. We have less than 2 minutes left. John, I'm going to leave the last word to you. As I said, I'm here, and I thank you so much, Zach
Thank you.
and Becky,
Thank
for
you.
being here. Your program moved me, it changed me, changed my lines of communications with my children as well, and my life as well. What should we be looking for as parents, but also as young adults?
Well, I think again it gets back to just establishing a great communication line as much as you can. But the other point that I make during the parent presentation is I think you need to enable other lines of communication, recognizing that your kid will not tell you everything.
Right.
But the important thing is they tell somebody.
Right.
And I think as Becky and Zachary were sharing with us, making themselves available to young people is tremendous because they need those options. I know as parents we want to know everything that goes on in our children's lives, but that's just not a reality a lot of times.
Right.
I wish.
We wish we want to
Right.
control everything, but
Yeah.
we at the end of the day we really can't. But I think the last thing we want is for some teenager to be dealing with a teen crisis completely on their own. And so I think with peer support and also other adult options in their lives is critical. And so we should enable those relationships.
And that's really why we're here tonight, because we don't want anybody to deal with this important issue on their own. And I will say the final word: if you know anybody who's being cyberbullied, or if you were a victim of cyberbullying, Mr. Halligan's statement is very important. You don't need to do this alone. You can go on my website, fushillo.nysenate.gov. You can call my office at 516-882-0630 in a confidential manner. But please go on the website and look at the cyberbullying resources. You're not alone, and there's help out there. Thank you very much. Zach, Becky, John, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.